Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, a nationally ranked community-focused bank with over 30 locations throughout Virginia, Northeast Tennessee, and North Carolina. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Visit firstbank.com to learn more. What's going on, Hokie Nation? We're coming at you on a Victory Monday as Virginia Tech football ends the regular season in the win column with a win over Virginia. We got the football crew on set to unpack it all. It's episode 395 of the Tech Sideline podcast, and it starts right now. And we're recording this thing on Monday, December 2nd, 2024, from our high-tech studio right here at the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, refer the show to a friend, and head over to techsideline.com. Check out our extensive editorial content because subscriptions are just $12 a month for loads of content. And if you're a Virginia Tech student, as always, your subscription is free. Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. Be sure to check out our Tech Sideline poster store and grab a copy of our iconic photo of Reggie Floyd standing over Bryce Perkins in the 2018 Tech UVA game in Lane Stadium. Check out the link in the YouTube description and look for the poster titled 15 Straight. Will Stewart told me to let everybody know that we've got great photography picked out. We got a lot of good stuff to check out. So get all your Christmas shopping in. Head over to the Tech Sideline store for all your friends and family that are big Hokie fans. As always, I'm your host, Giovanni Heater. To my right, Chris Coleman, our lead analyst and columnist. Across the way, Andy Bitter, our senior staff writer. And nobody in the fourth chair today. David is all the way down in Georgia, heading from Florida to Georgia, covering women's basketball and men's basketball the last couple of weeks. Nick, of course, producing the show behind the scenes, the mustache man. We got Andy. We got Chris. Chris is a little under the weather, so we appreciate him being here. Could not disappoint the fans and let them down. So Chris is here.
I'm going to have very little to say today.
He's rocking.
So it's going to be disappointing from that standpoint.
All right, time to step it up, Gio. Here we go.
Going to get yelled at for talking too much on social media.
Yeah, let some other people talk here. Come on. It's ridiculous.
All right, let's unpack this thing a little bit here. It was, first of all, very cold, Andy. You and I had the luxury of being in the press box, though, which was nice.
Press box felt fine. I don't know what everybody else is talking about.
And Lane was packed. Great crowd.
Very good crowd. And I felt like they stayed for most of the game, too. And I think at 23 at halftime, you're like, I think I'll cut out at this thing. I think I've seen what I need to see. But no, it was, you know, we talked about it. It's been 6 years since they've been able to see Virginia Tech play Virginia in Lane Stadium. So I thought it was a great atmosphere. You know, you look at the team, they're 5-6, you know, not having the season that they'd hoped, and the crowd was still there. It's pretty impressive resilience, I think, from the Hokies fan base that continues to show up every week for these guys.
I think everybody did a good job layering up. Like, I broke out all my winter clothes and everything like that, and it was a lot warmer than I thought I would be.
And it sounds like you're in great shape because of it.
I'm in great shape, yeah. I actually ended up spending most of my Sunday outside, too, in a story I don't want to get into. But, yeah, it's got me a little bit sick.
There we go. Chris is under the weather. 37-17 win for Virginia Tech. Hokies are going bowling for the second consecutive season. That's the first time that's happened since 2018, 2019. Tech's now won 23 of the last 25 against Virginia, and they've protected Lane Stadium since 1998. That's the last time the Cavaliers won in Blacksburg. I think the best way to start today, guys, is talking about, how about Pop Watson? Over 300 yards of total offense and 2 touchdowns on Saturday.
He looked good. He looked in control. He didn't look overwhelmed by the moment. He made plays. I thought he threw a good ball in that game, a couple of deep balls, but then the one he put on the line to Jalen Lane for the touchdown, and he hit one early to Daquan Felton where it wasn't a strike, but he put it up there high enough that Felton could run underneath it instead of just a couple yards in front of him where it falls incomplete. So I thought he controlled the game well. He made plays with his feet. I said this in my 5 thoughts. I'm like, this is sacrilege, but a little Tyrod-esque at times. Like, I'm not saying he's Tyrod Taylor, okay? I'm just saying the way he moved back there in the pocket, and, he's not the biggest guy back there. We've grown accustomed seeing some bigger quarterbacks at Virginia Tech like this, but, he kind of zips around like that and makes plays like that. So I thought he handled himself really well. Managed the game well. No picks. Pretty good pass efficiency out there. I don't even think he put the ball in danger honestly, in any situation that I remember. So for a first career start, I thought he looked very good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I picked Tech to score 31 points in this game, so I was actually expecting a good performance from him, but he exceeded my expectations. I thought he did a great job. He was very much in control. His composure was very impressive when he's in the pocket, and he can navigate the pocket well, kind of knows when to take off and then knows when to throw it. I thought, like Andy said, he gave his receivers a chance on deep balls, and that's all you can ask. And there are times this year where Tech's receivers, they just haven't had a chance to make those plays on deep balls, but they had that opportunity on Saturday. Pop was he started his entire career in high school. I believe his dad was his high school head coach, if I remember correctly. So he grew up in a football household. He's a very experienced football player in terms of number of starts under his belt. I know people say, oh, redshirt freshman, he hasn't been there. And yeah, he hasn't been there at the college level or whatever, but he's very much in control out there just because of his background being in a football family and a football household. So very pleased with what I saw and excited for his future.
Well, as you can expect, it has sparked the conversation of who is quarterback one next year. What do we think about Pop Watson's future in Blacksburg?
I'm not sure who quarterback one next year is. I know a lot of people are like, well, move on. It's the next era. It's begun. I'm like, yeah, pump the brakes. A lot of quarterbacks look good against UVA. Let's be honest about that. Yeah. They've made a lot of opposing quarterbacks have pretty good stat lines this year when they've gone up against them. That's not to take away, what Pop did in that game. I think it's an impressive job, but I think everybody's kind of down on Drones right now, and it's like, well, he was hurt the entire second half of the season. You didn't really get to see him, on his full skills on display in that sense. I know he struggled early in the year, but he kind of turned it around at Miami, played really well at Stanford, and then the BC game didn't have to do a whole lot. He was an efficient passer in that game. I think it was like 14 of 18 or something like that, and obviously Bayshaw was the star of that. And then after that was Georgia Tech, and before Georgia Tech is when he got hurt. That's the first time, in hindsight, we heard about it, a week later at Syracuse, I think. But that's when we heard that he had been hurt before that week. So, I mean, we're talking about a big stretch of the season where you didn't get to see sort of the true Kyron Drones. And yeah, the first month wasn't great, but I think he's still a pretty good player. And I think he's a player you want to hold on to and maybe not necessarily move on to the next generation of quarterback yet. So I think they try like heck to keep both of them. I don't know what's reasonable in this NIL era because, first it's going to be costly to keep a couple of quarterbacks, but secondly, those guys want to play. And if they, feel like they maybe don't have an opportunity to play or maybe reach their potential in a certain spot, it wouldn't surprise me if one decided to move on. But if I'm Brent Pry, I try to keep both those guys in place and go into a quarterback situation in the future where you have Drones, you have Watson, let them compete first of all, and if one wins out, I mean, look at this year, you had to use 3 quarterbacks. So, I mean, there's probably a good chance you're going to have to go down the quarterback depth chart anyway next year.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. A lot of the times these days, you don't keep both guys. It's going to be interesting to see what happens at Georgia Tech, right? With Philo playing well for them and then Haynes King coming back and looking like a Heisman Trophy winner the other night. What's going to happen there? That's just an issue that all staffs have to face these days. I know that it would really bother Tech fans if they lost Pop Watson and then all of a sudden you look up a year from now or 2 years from now and he's playing really well for someone else. So that's
a homegrown guy too.
Yes,
right. You don't get that too often these days.
Exactly. So we'll see. I know this. If Drones has to have any sort of surgery, he's not going to be able to participate in spring practice, right? So if he were to transfer, he wouldn't be able to practice a new system during the spring. So it's in his best interest to stay at Virginia Tech, in my opinion. How does that impact Pop Watson? I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not going to spend too awful much time thinking about it because, first of all, we're very busy this week with signing day and things like that. But it's on my mind. I know it's on everybody's mind, but you just don't have any. You're not going to get any answers to that anytime soon. I think he's going to start the ball game for Virginia Tech, like Andy said in his article yesterday. And who knows? Who knows what's going to happen in the ball game? Maybe he'll look like a freshman in the ball game, and we stop having this conversation.
Sure,
just got to wait it out.
Are we missing an opportunity with Pop Watson because his initials are WW3?
Absolutely.
I feel like WW3 is like right there, and we're going with Pop. And his nickname goes back to when he was little, and his grandfather, when he was like 2 or 3 years old, his grandfather said he just acted like he was the boss, like he was an old soul, and acted, so they started calling him Pop at that point. But I feel like, man, WW3 is kind of a cool abbreviation for a quarterback.
Be some
name.
Awesome T-shirts.
Oh yeah, marketing opportunity. There. Don't pass it up.
Piggybacks off of Drone Strike too. In some ways when you go
just the war-minded team here with drone strikes, World War III, all over the place.
I mean, what other school, right? We're the only other Power 4 school with a core besides Texas A&M.
Right.
I wanted to ask you guys: is there a third avenue that we have not mentioned on the set where they try and explore bringing somebody else in out of the portal to play quarterback?
I don't think so.
I can't imagine. I mean, if Drones or Watson were to leave, and again, I'm not saying this is going to happen,
sure,
but if one of those leaves, then all of a sudden you have to look at who your backup quarterback is in that situation. And Schlee is done. This is his last year, so you'd be down to Davy Belfour and the quarterbacks they're going to sign this week. That's a pretty young crew, and that's why they went out this year and they got Schlee in the first place to be the backup. So also I want to say for all the people like, oh, they should have been starting Watson the whole year. It's like, first of all, you don't know what kind of player he was at the beginning of the year. Second of all, he did this against UVA. And third of all, I think Schlee actually looked pretty good in the games that he played in. So oh my gosh, they're playing the wrong quarterback again. It's like, I actually think all three quarterbacks this year have shown pretty good glimpses of what they're capable of. So I don't know if it necessarily is like, oh, the coaches messed this up again. I disagree with that.
I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
What do you expect? You think they're just going to bench Kyron Drones after the season he had last year and start Pop Watson? That's just not going to happen. And it's a small sample size. And we see this happen a lot in college football where a guy with no film will come in, play well, and then after 3 or 4 weeks, the film is out and he becomes easier to defend. Zach Pyron at Georgia Tech is a perfect example. He won in Lane Stadium as a true freshman. Now he's third string at Georgia Tech and hitting the transfer portal.
Well, I mean, you could maybe even say that about Kyron Drones last year.
You could.
He came on last year, did really well, and people have an off season to look at him and maybe figure out ways to defend him a little bit better, turn him into a pocket passer or different ways. And I think Virginia Tech maybe helped in that by trying to change how he did things in that first month. But again, doing it once is going to be different from doing it consistently over the course of a season.
Well, taking a look at this offense led by Pop Watson on Saturday, Tech outgained UVA 456 to 274. Virginia Tech averaged 7.5 yards a play. And this was kind of the Chris special again. 21 passes, 40 rushes, 202 yards on the ground. They kind of did their strength, really.
I thought it really reminded me of the Syracuse game, except Virginia Tech held on to the big lead this time. I think the total yardage was almost exactly the same. The fact that it was balanced between run and pass. It was almost exactly the same as the Syracuse game. I think the numbers that Watson put up were fairly similar to Schlee's number in the Syracuse game. So I just think that the main difference, of course, this time is the Hokies held on. Obviously, the UVA quarterback situation is a little bit different than the Syracuse quarterback situation. But I think obviously there are issues where everyone has there have been times where everyone has had issues with Tyler Bowen. But it's important that we step back, and when he does something good, we say he did a good job, because it wouldn't be fair to him if we just sit around and criticize his bad games and didn't say good job when he did do a good job. And he's done a good job this year with managing the backup quarterback situation. You have Colin Schlee at Syracuse, and you build a game plan around him, and it succeeds. You don't win the game because the defense collapses, but it succeeded. Same thing here with Pop Watson in this one, and I thought they seemed to have a good plan against Duke last week. I didn't really like what they did against Clemson, but we don't know if that was even a Tyler Bowen decision to start Kyron Drones in that game. But I think when they've had a week going into games, knowing which quarterback they're going to have, they've done a good job game planning for those backups and designing an offense around them. So props to those guys for that.
Well, you look at so the max points that each quarterback has scored as a starter. 42 for Drones against Boston College, 31 for Schlee against Syracuse, 37 for Watts. I mean,
that's pretty good.
They're getting production all the way down the line of quarterbacks. Again, I've said it before, but sometimes you get to that third quarterback. It's not like every team is 2014 Ohio State, where they have just all these blue chip quarterbacks they could just go to and they win a national title with a third stringer. Usually you get to that third string and you're in trouble. And you're like, I don't know. I mean, look what Pitt did when they get to their second string. They just completely collapsed this year. Yeah. So to be able to get down this far on the depth chart, I think it's a testament to this offense and this staff for keeping those guys prepared and getting them ready and designing a game plan that's to their strengths. And they go out there and obviously Pop executed it very well. And the team helped him, all the players around him. And it was just a very good game.
Andy, granted they didn't score 55 points necessarily like last year on the road. It felt like similar to last year's game, Tech set the tone right from the get-go. You go on an 11-play, 90-yard scoring drive that lasts 5 minutes and 49 seconds and start the game with a touchdown, and it felt like it was wraps from there.
It did, and I think the first quarter stats was, or first two drives was 144 yards to -9.
-9.
So
exactly.
it's like not only did Tech go down and score right away like that, and they get a field goal in the second one, I believe, but they also just completely shut down what UVA was doing. And you don't need to tell Hokies fans, what it's like to get off to a bad start and how much that could hurt you the rest of the game. And UVA got off to a bad start in this game, and it put them in a hole. And no matter what Tony Muskett did, he ran the ball a lot better than I thought he was capable of. First of all, I was surprised that he started.
Me too.
Maybe that thrust Anthony Calandria into the transfer portal as well. But once they got going, a little nervous there. I think Hokies fans were later in the game when it was 13. It's like, are you going to put this team away or let them come in? But that strong start that they had, I mean, it's just tough to get your way out of that hole.
I think there was only 1 point in this game where things were questionable, and that was with 3 minutes left in the first half when it was still only 10-3. And you're like, okay, you got off to a great start, but they've gotten back in it now. So if you're UVA, you're like, okay, just get to halftime. You're down by 7. You weathered a bad start, and now you're very much in the football game. Well, they immediately gave up a long touchdown pass and then threw an interception. So just like that, Tech tacked on 10 points in basically the last 2.5 minutes of the half, and that was ball game at that point.
Good for Jalen Lane to get that long touchdown pass. After they had the one last year, they got wiped out by the bogus holding penalty, and it seems like it had been a while since he had a big one.
Well,
like
he only scored 1 touchdown this year.
Was it the punt
one
return?
receiving touchdown?
Okay. Yeah,
he had one on the punt return, but only 1 receiving touchdown this year, and he had 6 last season.
Yeah.
So it had been a while.
Well, it feels like, to be honest with you, across the board, there's been less receiving touchdowns for everybody. They ran the ball so efficiently this year, and Tootin's always breaking off these long ones. He did it again. 18 carries, 124 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, and then again, that 58-yarder in the second half. I will continue to say it's just such a shame that he did not play full health, full strength the entire season, because between missing some games, being very limited against Clemson, I don't think you got to see his full potential. And I think he finishes like 22nd in the nation in rushing yards, and it feels like for whatever it's worth, it could have been much higher.
His elusive rating on PFF is first in the ACC, even ahead of Hampton down at UNC. And elusive rating measures a runner's effectiveness independent of blocking. So if everybody was out on a football field with no blockers, how good are they? And he's number 1 in the ACC. And, you can certainly buy that. He forces a ton of missed tackles. He's number 1 in the ACC in average yards after contact. I think it's 4.8, something like that. But it's a lot of yards after contact for him. Just a tremendous running back. Wish the Hokies had him for another year. The good thing is Elijah Brooks, put some guys in the NFL when he was at Maryland as the running backs coach. Now he's going to say, I put Bishal Tootin in the NFL. I mean, Elijah Brooks is a really good running backs coach at this point. He's proven. So Virginia Tech should not have an issue getting a quality player from the transfer portal, in my opinion.
There's this chart that this guy puts out every week, and it says broken to missed tackles on one axis and yards after contact per attempt on the other one. And the two logos that sort of separate themselves from the rest are Virginia Tech and Boise State.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I know why Boise State's out there,
sure.
Ashton Jonty, and I know why Virginia Tech's out there. It just kind of tells you how valuable Bashal Tootin is to this team. I'm with Chris. I think they're going to need a transfer. I don't think I look in that room. You know, Malachi Thomas went through senior day. You can never tell what that's going to tell you, whether he's going to come back or not. But he's had opportunities before, and I don't feel like he's been like a number one guy that you can rely on. Clearly, they don't kind of view Coney like that yet. More of a north-south guy, and maybe not the all-around back that they need. Definitely need to find a running back in the portal. Shoot, maybe two running backs? I don't know. Do you want to go to this? I don't know when PJ Prelo is going to be able to come back.
Right.
That was a sort of mid-season injury, looked pretty serious. I don't think you get to August and you're like, he's on the verge of coming back. I think it might go into the season. And if that's the case, are you going to go into the season again with like 4 scholarship running backs? Like that seems a little light at that point. So I don't know what the situation is going to look like after signing day, after the portal stuff, but you need one, maybe possibly even 2 running backs out there.
This sounds like a situation where they need to hire Andy as the GM. Did you see that Stanford did that? They just hired Andrew Luck as their general manager.
Oh, wow.
Are you just basing this on our first names? Is that why we should get this? Like, I'm for it if that's what it's for. It's like, I think Andrew Luck knows a bit more about football than I do in this situation.
No, it just seems like
maybe
you know what the Hokies need.
A little bit better.
There you go. Speaking of which, we didn't really see much of the other tailbacks. Coney a little bit, but it was kind of the Tootin show, and maybe that is one side you could say cause for concern. Other side, maybe they just need to attack the portal a little bit here.
His last carry, I think, was the 58-yard touchdown, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Running backs in bowl games, draftable running backs in bowl games. Don't see. Always play in it. We'll see. I mean, he's been a trooper all season, and he said I'll heal up after the season. It's like, okay, that's one thing during the regular season. If you're in the Fenway Bowl playing against Memphis on a freezing cold day and in late December, do you really want to do that before your NFL audition coming up here? We'll see like that. But if that was his last carry as a Hokie, the 58-yarder to put away UVA in that game, that's a pretty cool way to go out.
Another thing that stood out, it would be a really cool way to go out. Another thing that stood out to me was the fact that when you go to a third-string quarterback, maybe you expect them to have a receiver to lean on. It felt like last week against Duke when he came in the game, that was Ollie Jennings. Now, Ollie had already sparked up a little bit because Colin Schley threw him that touchdown, but I believe he still caught maybe 4 or 5 passes from Pop. I think he finished the game with like 6 catches.
Against the Duke game?
In the Duke game.
6 for 158.
There you go. So he caught at least 4 passes, I believe, from Pop after Schley went down in the last play of the first quarter. This week it wasn't. It seemed to be Jalen Lane was his guy, but Pop was dispersing the ball nicely, went to Lane more consistently, especially with the 66-yard touchdown. But I just found it enjoyable to see.
It was balanced. It looked the part. The passing game looked the part this week. Consistent from start to finish. He had the best single game QBR of any Virginia Tech starter this year. This was the first time all season that every single one of Virginia Tech's top 5 wide receivers caught a pass in the same game. At least one of them had been shut out in every game previously. So, there were a lot of things that went right in the passing game. I do think there was a smoothness and a balance to the passing game that had not previously been there. How much of that was due to Pop and being maybe a little bit a step ahead of as a natural passer? I don't know. How much of that is that UVA's pass defense ranking like, I don't know, 130th in the country or something like that?
Something like that.
When they're really bad. I don't know. It's some of both, I think. I always caution people, like, when you get your first look at a player, don't completely fall in love with him because it's just one glimpse. But at the same time, I totally understand why people really liked what they saw from Watson the other night, because I certainly did.
I'll say this. He could have thrown one more pass to Jennings, because that would have gotten us 2 more buy or sell victories. That could be the difference between victory or defeat on the season. He had the 15th completion. I did Jennings' 3rd. He came up 1 short in both.
Wow.
And now Will gets to crow about a 5-0 week.
Well, and
when he contradicted himself in his score prediction.
He screwed up, right? For the second week in a row. Yep.
Yeah, so he's the founder. He can do what he wants, but I'm just pointing out he contradicted himself about yourself.
If he wins it, it's going to be a big asterisk.
Yeah.
I had in the press box when we were eating the media meal, Damien came and sat next to me. He's like, so I heard you and Andy have the exact same buy or sell picks this week. And I was like, that's bad news for Andy.
They
But
were solid picks, though.
We went
they were
3-2?
so close to 5-0.
I know. And we went 3-2. So I'll take it. I don't know if you're disappointed with that
I'm
performance.
disappointed. Yes, I'm disappointed.
I'm above 500 on the week, so I have to take what I can get there, living in the basement. We could give John Love his flowers as well. 3 for 3 on field goals along a 41, and took care of business in the cold, which is what you need to do as a kicker.
It's not always easy to be a kicker in the cold because you're standing there doing nothing for most of the game. And, they can wrap those guys up pretty well these days, but still, it's not like coming into a game when it's 75 degrees and kicking a field goal. I mean, the ball's hard and it's a little bit windy out there. So, yeah, props to him because, he puts himself in a position, a lot of these NFL teams are in cold weather places, and you show you can kick in the cold, that gives you an opportunity.
Would you have allowed him to try a 68-yard field goal like the Patriots did with Joey Sly on Sunday?
I don't know about all that.
And he came up just short.
Just short.
It's like,
It's like, remember how the Tecmo Super Bowl field goals would always end up just short, even if they were from like 99 yards away? The graphic was always the same.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened. That would have been. I think they said it would have been the NFL record by 4 yards or something like that. It's like okay, no trouble with that. You're outdoors in New England,
right?
Early December, trying to kick the ball 68 yards.
It was either that or let Drake May throw the Hail Mary, and they went with letting him try and leg it. But how about your boy John Parker Romo for the Vikings?
Star turn for the Vikings, for the future Super Bowl champion Vikings.
Oh,
they're not going to win the Super Bowl, but I can dream, can I?
Yeah, I also can dream. I would, Andy, we'd have to watch that together if it was a Buffalo Minnesota Super Bowl.
Speaking of snow,
I think if Buffalo played Minnesota for the Super Bowl, they'd just forfeit it. Neither team would be allowed to win. Like the two biggest Super Bowl losers in history.
Yeah. True.
The league would not allow them to win that.
True. The other fan base that would be cool, either Minnesota, who's a starving fan base, or if it was Buffalo versus Detroit.
Buffalo versus Detroit might be. First of all, that'd be a great game, and second of all, that'd be like the two very starved franchises going for it there. Yes, no doubt. As always, Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, where exceptional customer service comes first. First Bank and Trust Company offers a variety of checking and savings account options that are sure to meet your banking needs. That includes free checking, so visit firstbank.com to find the account that's right for you. All right, let's go over to Nick. He's got some stats with Scott Glesner over in our, I guess, fifth chair, we're calling it, the producer's chair.
Yeah, let's take a look at these. These are mainly all about Virginia Tech and UVA. Starting out with Virginia Tech continued their scoring streak against UVA, extending 23 straight quarters. That goes back, that includes an overtime score, and that goes back to the 2015 game and Beamer's final game against the Who's. So, that's a pretty impressive streak right there that just keeps going. And
that's like the Clemson scoring streak against Virginia Tech. And it was snapped this year.
Yeah, that was snapped by two. Yeah, shut them out in 2 quarters. Virginia Tech also continued their streak of gaining 450-plus yards versus Virginia. Now stands at 6 straight games. That is impressive to me.
I wonder in that time how many non-UVA 450-yard games they had. Because there was a streak there for a while. Like getting to 400 was a real challenge for this team.
Yeah,
that 2017 game, what was that, 10-0?
10-0.
Freezing cold game in Charlottesville. Yeah, I think that's the last game that Virginia Tech did not reach 450-plus yards. This was the first time Virginia Tech outscored Virginia in every quarter since the 2011 shutout. Is that a shutout?
38-0.
Yeah. So of course you're going to shut out. You're outscore Virginia in every game.
Just barely in that third quarter. I think it was 10-8.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And UVA was driving, so they outlasted them there.
They did eventually score on that drive in the fourth
wasn't that
quarter
the
as
Musket
well.
rushing touchdown?
Yeah.
Might have been, yeah.
Virginia Tech, this is probably the most impressive one. Virginia Tech has now 5 100-plus rushing yard rushers versus Virginia in the last 4 games between the two schools.
Can we name them? Do we know what they are?
All right. So Tootin.
I don't have it, so you could say whoever, and I'd be like, oh, sure, that's right.
Twice.
Blackshear.
I'm assuming Blackshear.
Van Herbert.
Herbert went ballistic.
Yeah.
That's 4.
That's 4.
Oh, Burmeister may have hit it.
Oh, did Burmeister hit it in that game?
Did Hendon hit it that one year?
Hendon might have. Hendon broke off a long touchdown run in the 2019
But so did
game.
Burmeister. I'll look into it later.
Do we have 2 100? Was it Burmeister and Blackshear go over 100 yards in that game?
I think it was.
Okay.
It was either that or Hooker. I didn't have time to research these as much as I wanted to. I was prepping for this as well.
Right.
Here, I'll pull up the box score right now. Looks like rushing. Yes, Burmeister. I called it. 115 yards on the ground. And, he had a 60-some yarder. He did not score a rushing touchdown. Had a receiving touchdown that game, though.
Oh.
That was on the Philly special or the Hokie special. Going on from that, the -6 yards Virginia Tech held Virginia in the first quarter is the fewest allowed versus UVA in a quarter since at least 1987. That's, of course, as far back Damian Salas's stat database goes back. Virginia Tech is currently forcing. This is impressive, especially when you go back last year, where the Hokies struggled to force turnovers, and this was a thing that you in the preseason, Chris, said that they really needed to improve on. And Virginia Tech is now forcing 1.92 turnovers a game. That is currently the highest mark since 2015.
Wow. Yep.
And so I mean that's just a remarkable. I think one of our buy or sell lines was 10 plus interceptions, and they're cruising past it. They have 14 this season.
Yeah, I got that one way wrong.
Yeah, that was one of the. You did very well in the preseason lines, by the way, Andy. So I'll give you your props there. By the way, you went 3 for 5. You and the fans are the only 3 and 2. You and the fans are the only.
What were the preseason props?
Undefeated at home. Everybody sold that. A defensive lineman, 10 plus sacks.
Nice.
Only 3 people got that right. Andy and David were the 2 non-fans to get that right. Team 10 plus interceptions, drones 30 plus touchdowns, and 9 plus wins, which we all bought. So that was rough times. Anyways,
confidence was high before the season.
Yeah.
Going back and watching that video was highly entertaining. By the way, highly recommend. Virginia Tech has forced at least 1 turnover in 11 straight games. The last time Virginia Tech has that sort of a streak was 2013 to 2014. And the final 2, this was the first time Virginia Tech scored 30-plus points in the first 3 quarters since last year's UVA game, which they put up 48 in 3 quarters. So a hot start for Virginia Tech in back-to-back years against the Hoos. And then the last one, this one's kind of an oddball and a little bit forced, I think, by Scott. Love you, Scott. Yeah, got great stuff, but this one feels a little forced. If Virginia Tech had put up at least 3 more points in the fourth quarter, it would have been the 6th time ever Virginia Tech scored double-digit points in all 4 quarters. The 5 on record, all wins, by the way, are 2015. That was a 50-burger, I believe. 1999 Temple, 1999 Syracuse, 1996 Louisiana Lafayette. You remember that game, Chris?
Yeah, Jay Delhomme was a starting quarterback.
Okay, I didn't. I had no clue that game existed. And then 1995 Akron. So, Virginia Tech just needed 3 points in the fourth quarter.
All those numbers lead me to the conclusion that UVA is not good at football.
How about that?
There we go.
Shocker.
Yeah, it was a rough finish. I mean, when you're 4-1, I mean, you're thinking like, oh, for sure, I'm going to get to a bowl game here. Yeah. And then, I mean, not only it was a bad second half of the season, they had, I think Teal tweeted during the game, they had trailed by 24 points in at least 5 games this year. So they go 1-6 down the stretch, miss a bowl game. It's like, man, you think Tony Ellitt's turning the corner there with the way they started. Now you're back to sort of the same spot. And I think 5-7 probably exceeded expectations for what a lot of people had for UVA. Certainly what I had for UVA this year. But now it's like, yeah, that bad finish. You didn't get to a bowl game, which was disappointing after the start. You lose both your top quarterbacks from this year. I mean, Musket graduates and Calandri just went in the portal. It's like, okay, where's the progress? Where's the momentum for that program? Like, I know Hokies fans feel that way about their program as well, but they're in a little bit better situation than UVA.
Yeah, the fact that they just got hammered. Like, it's one thing to go 5-7, but when most of your games in the second half of the season aren't competitive at all. It's like it didn't seem like they're going to get blown out whether they're playing Virginia Tech or whether they're playing Notre Dame, right? It's just it's not going to be. It's just going to be a blowout.
Yeah.
And then for coaching news, just a little bit of coaching carousel. Andy mentioned this in our group chat yesterday. Ryan Walters of Purdue was fired, and Neil Brown of West Virginia fired. Combined, went 3-0 against the Hokies, and Ryan Walters only 5 wins in his 2 seasons with the Boilermakers.
That's brutal.
One of them came against the Hokies.
20% of your career wins against Virginia Tech. That game, by the way, is the one where they played an injured quarterback an entire half and
the rain delay.
And we
was weird.
Sat in Lane Stadium for 6.5 hours.
I didn't.
Oh, Chris didn't.
Smart.
And then also Brad Cornelson, interim head coach in the bowl game for the Sam
boy.
Houston
Is there a way-
Bearcats. How about
Could
that?
Virginia Tech play Sam Houston in a bowl game somewhere? That would be great.
fantastic.
That would be entertaining.
That's my ideal bowl game versus Brad Cornelson in like the Bahamas Bowl.
Or
That would
a
be
depleted West Virginia team that did make a bowl game as well.
great. Right.
I mean, that could actually happen.
It could.
In
The
some of
Mayo's
the bowl
Bowl, right?
tie-ins. Yeah.
Match that one up. Yeah, I think they would intentionally try and match that one up. Would be entertaining.
Well, I thought they would have last year, and they didn't. They had UNC and West Virginia play, and I don't think it was as much of a crowd as they would have hoped for that game.
Two kind of different fan bases.
Yeah,
shall
yeah.
we say. Yeah.
yeah.
Slightly.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's talk about this Virginia Tech defense here briefly. Very solid on defense. Felt like they kept everything in front of them, I think was the biggest thing. Virginia's longest play was a little rollout, fakes the give, rolls out, Musket hits Sedarian Harrison, 24 yards. That was their biggest gain offensively. So I think that says a lot about Tech's defense.
I think so. They certainly dominated the first half of the game, especially the first quarter of the game. And, they kind of kept UVA at arm's length after that. At some point, the other team is going to make a few plays and get some yards and get a few points here and there. But UVA has been struggling so bad offensively recently. I think that was in their last 5 games, they've been under 20 points in 4 of them now. I believe that's right.
Yeah.
I think with their biggest scoring output being 24 points in that span, and that was in the win against Pitt. So it's just not a very good UVA offense right now. I would have been disappointed, very disappointed, that if Virginia Tech had let up a lot of points against those guys.
Yeah, this seems. I saw a lot of people complaining about the defense, like, Chris Marv, what are you doing out there? It's like you expect them to just completely suffocate the other team. I mean, they didn't give up any big plays.
Right.
Like they got up big, and how'd they lose the Syracuse game? They gave up big plays. So what'd they do? They kept everything in front of them. Oh yeah, the quarterback ran for some yards, but he didn't run for like an 80-yard touchdown. That's the only way UVA is getting back in that game is if they make big plays like that. So if you want to take the short ones like that and take 8 minutes or 7 minutes to go down the field and score, by all means, do it. The game was over and it was a comfortable win. They didn't even get 300 yards of offense in that game. Didn't rush for 100, even for everything that Musket ran for in that game. So a successful defensive game plan and execution, I think. And APR with 3 sacks, almost had a half sack off the ACC lead. Mm-hmm. Both those guys really racked it up in the last game.
It was like a sack off the nation lead.
Yeah. I mean, you remember, God, what was it? It was like a season in the 90s in the NBA where the scoring title came down to the last day, and I forget who put up a huge number. Somebody put up a huge number first, then David Robinson scored like 70 points against the Clippers or something like that. It's like that's what it kind of felt like, as these teams just trying to rack up their sack total in the last game. But will be interesting with APR to see where he finishes in this Defensive Player of the Year vote in the ACC. Something a Virginia Tech player has never won, interestingly. So wow. he got my vote. I think I can spoil that here. It's not like the Heisman where you can't tell anybody how you voted on that. But
you're a homer, Andy.
Yeah, I'm sure people will say that. But you look at the candidates on the Defensive Player of the Year, I don't think there's just like an obvious candidate this year. So yeah, I think the vote will be pretty interesting.
Was Ezraku on there? Because he finished with the nation's lead 16 and a half sacks.
He was on there. That Pittsburgh linebacker, is it Lewis or Louis? I don't know how you pronounce his last name. He was on there. He's got some pretty impressive stats too. So I think it's going to be a diverse vote. I don't think you're going to see one guy. I don't think it's going to be like offense, where I think Cam Ward's going to win it probably unanimously. I think it'd be hard to beat him on that side of the ball. But the Defensive Player of the Year, that should be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah. It's really is weird that a Virginia Tech player has never won that. Like, you look back at some of the past great defenses. I look at like the 2007 Virginia Tech defense, 2006 Virginia Tech defense, top 5 defenses. I think probably the number 1 defense in 2006. Like, you could have given that award to like either Vince Hall or Brandon Flowers.
That's the problem, though, is there are too many guys, and they would either split the vote or you wouldn't get the stats that would accumulate if you were like a single star on a defense. If you're the one guy getting in the backfield all the time, and maybe you kind of see that with Virginia Tech this year, don't have the greatest defense, but APR was obviously putting up huge stats. That's easier to stand out from a voter's perspective when they're just looking at stats than going, well, how did he play within the framework of the defense? And this guy's incredible, but he has 60 tackles. Right. So how do you compare that to somebody who's got 16 and a half sacks or whatever?
This kind of piggybacks off this conversation, but I was watching ESPN this morning, and here's a trivia question for you. Who is the last Buffalo Bills player, and there's a tie, so that obviously gives it away. Who's the last Buffalo Bills player to win one of those awards, either being Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, or League MVP?
I mean, it's got to be Bruce Smith,
It was Bruce Smith. Yeah, it was Bruce Smith, and he did it later on, too. He did it in, 98 was the last time he did it, and that was after they had went to the 4 Super Bowls in 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, Bruce Smith, and he would have probably had an opportunity to do it at Tech if they were in the ACC at that point.
Yeah, I'd say so. He had some good seasons.
Yeah, he was pretty good at football. How about this Virginia Tech defense as well? Dominant out of the gate. UVA punts on its first 3 drives, gained just 38 total yards on those first 3 drives. And then you had the takeaways. Jalen Jones with the interception, Monsieur Delane. They were both overthrown footballs, but ready for the moment. And Delane's kind of really just put it on ice at that point if there was any doubt.
Yeah, it was a nice capper to get that interception at the end there. Again, they didn't give up the big plays. I think that was the thing. I mean, it obviously killed him at Duke. It obviously allowed Syracuse to get back in that game. And I think if the pass defense plays a little bit better in either of those games, we're looking at the season a whole lot different at this point. So, I think that was... I keep coming back to it. That's the only way the Cavaliers could have gotten back in the game. They didn't allow them to do it. So, impressive finish.
Yeah, for sure. Virginia Tech is outside the top 100 defensively in passing plays of 40-plus yards this year. They've given up a ton of passing plays for a long yardage, but they didn't do it in this game, and that's one of the reasons they won for sure.
Virginia Tech also forced a pair of turnover on downs. UVA was 5 of 13 on 3rd down, and then they were 1 of 3 on 4th down. So a little bit of overarching analysis here before we let everybody go. 6 wins. Andy, where do you think we're going bowling?
It's tough to say.
Sure.
I mean, right now you kind of have to wait to see how the playoff field is set, because that affects everything behind it. And I think I'm going to write something on this week at some point. It's weird with signing day on Wednesday. That's such a weird time to do it. And it's just like a wrench thrown in the middle of conference championship week for some reason. I don't know why they're doing this. But, if the ACC gets 2 in the playoff, then that everybody kind of gets bumped up a rung in the bowl selection process. There's a chance, say Clemson beats SMU and SMU drops out of the top 11 or 12 or whatever you need to be ranked to get an automatic or an at-large bid to this whole thing. Then all of a sudden SMU is with Miami in that next pool of teams. It's possible Miami stays in the top 12 when these rankings come out on Tuesday. With nobody playing in that sort of second group, if everything holds at the top, perhaps Miami gets in as one of the last at-large teams. So that's going to fill up all those spots at the top. I think there's a chance that the Hokies could sneak into that tier where it's Sun Bowl, Duke's Mayo Bowl, Pinstripe Bowl. If they don't, they would fall back to the one that's got Military, Gasparilla, and Fenway Bowl. They won't go back to the Military Bowl. They don't do repeat bowl games. There's enough flexibility that that's not going to happen. So then it's either Fenway up in Boston in late December or Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa early on December 20th. I'm not hoping for that game because I have a poker game that's pretty important at the end of the year on the 19th that I would prefer to play in versus going down and cover the bowl game. So I might be one of the only people rooting against going to Tampa for the bowl game in this situation.
Is this one of those? I'm also rooting to go to Fenway Park for obvious reasons, but
I'm not. I'd rather they get in that tier that has the Sun Bowl and Pinstripe and Duke's Mayo, just because I've seen a game at a baseball stadium before, a Pinstripe Bowl. It was horrible. It was freezing cold. I like Fenway Park's great for baseball in summer, not for football in December. I cannot imagine that being a fun experience going there.
Absolutely not. I think no way.
Sidelines are shared.
Yeah. I remember the first time I've ever experienced that. I mean, I wasn't there, but when Virginia Tech played in the Diamond Walnut Bowl in 2002, and they played in the San Francisco State baseball stadium.
Yeah.
they shared the same sideline, which was just completely strange. I don't know how you can do that. I don't know how
Nobody better plant a flag over there. It could be absolute mayhem.
Get your mace and your pepper spray ready, because but no, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Mayo Bowl. Is that what it is now? The Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Duke's Mayo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you've got your bowl eligible teams in the ACC. All the North Carolina schools are bowl eligible except for Wake. And did UNC play in that game?
UNC played in it last year, and Duke's got 9 wins. I think Duke's going to get one of those Florida Bowls.
Right,
I think.
probably so.
Or San Diego.
Like. Yeah, so you could take NC State in that game. I don't remember the last time that they were in that game. Or you could try to set up a Virginia Tech West Virginia matchup there. But that's kind of what it seems like. It seems like either the Mayo Bowl, the Gasparilla Bowl, or the Fenway Bowl. The Gasparilla Bowl, by the way, is named after a pirate. Did you know that?
By the way, Duke's Mayo Bowl this year is a Big Ten opponent.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, why are people saying that it might end up?
I think because it was last year. I think it alternates in that bowl game.
Oh, well, never mind.
But sometimes they just swap things out for better matchups,
which they
too.
should.
Honestly, could you get like a Virginia Tech Nebraska? Like, talk about two starred fan bases that have a history.
Yeah.
That'd be a really fun game to watch. I think that could sell some tickets if you go. Like, Nebraska's going to travel like a roving horde this year. They're just gonna they're gonna be like Mad Max traveling down the road to whatever this is. Just like this caravan of
Riolo
going
play.
there.
You know, they're not gonna have a guy opt out that's their future, at quarterback.
That could be a fun experience. Virginia Tech fans, Nebraska fans sitting around in bars in Charlotte lamenting their
commiserating
football.
their former
what happened
about their
to
former
us?
glory.
Remember the last time we were all together? It was 2 good programs and remember when we played in an Orange Bowl against each other one time? And oh man, Pop Watson was once committed to Nebraska.
That's right.
Before Virginia Tech flipped him.
We got storylines.
Let's make this happen to Mayo Bowl.
We need
that
to
could be
put a
interesting.
sales pitch together.
Yeah.
And sell it to the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I think, Andy, the unfortunate thing for Tech, as far as getting into that upper echelon, like you're talking about, your Mayo Bowl, probably not going to go back to the pinstripe, but that caliber of bowl game is what happened in the ACC this past week. Because if Miami's knocked out of the playoff, and say Clemson loses in the ACC title game, they're out of the playoff, or say Clemson wins, they go to the playoff. Like, there's a chance the ACC only gets 1 team into the playoff, because I don't know if SMU with a loss in the ACC title is a playoff game. That knocks everybody down a rung and probably knocks Virginia Tech out of that bowl grouping, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think to be considered for that group, you're going to need 2 in the playoff. Because say 2 get in, and then say Clemson's the next team. So Clemson, Syracuse, Louisville, 9 wins, 8 wins in that top.
Duke's got 9.
That'd be those 3 bowls. Be Pop-Tarts, Gator, San Diego, the warm weather ones. You got Duke with 9 wins. They'd be in the conversation for one of those. But after that, everybody's at 7-5 or 6-6. And I've never really gotten clarity from the ACC. Like, you ask the ACC, like, what are the tiers? And they're like, they're all the same tier. It's like, they're not. Like, you're not being honest with me about how this whole selection process takes place. So there are tiers that the ACC doesn't actually admit to, which is kind of annoying. And there's also like these weird rules that pop up. Like, in the past, I don't know if a 6-6 team could be taken ahead of a 7-5 team. I think they always had a rule that if you're 6-6, you had to go behind the teams that had a winning record. I don't know if that's true or not. So it's sort of like clouded in mystery how this whole thing takes place. And then sometimes they'll just be like, we just swapped these situations. Or you get to a certain tier and there's a pecking order within that tier in a certain year, and they rotate it. Like last year, for instance, the Sun Bowl had the first pick in that tier, which became public when Notre Dame all of a sudden fell to that tier. They're like, holy crap, we're going to get Notre Dame? They didn't even have a helmet for Notre Dame when they were going to do the unveiling of who was in it. All of a sudden, Notre Dame fell to that tier, and the Sun Bowl is like, well, yeah, of course we're going to take Notre Dame if we have the opportunity. So it's not as straightforward as people think, and I think there's sort of some wheeling and dealing that takes place, and that's why last year it went all the way up, right up until like 6 o'clock when they were announcing the bowls, and they were still trying to sort out the ACC order.
And there are 13 bowl eligible teams in the ACC, I believe, out of 17.
Well, I think Cal still goes to where the Pac-12 bowls are this year.
Oh, okay.
I think those agreements are still in place for at least another year. I think that's the case.
All right.
Very interesting. All of this bowl talk is making me want to play college football 25.
I haven't played that in a minute.
Me
Maybe
neither.
now is the time.
I
Now
know.
that the time season's over. Fire it back up.
Been too busy, but that should have been a bye week task that never got taken care of. But what do you guys expect? And this is the last thing we'll leave it on here. What can fans be on the lookout for the next couple of weeks? You have signing day coming. Is there any coaching carousel things that could come about as far as maybe making some changes on this current staff, players that could depart or be added? What can fans have their eyes out for?
Well, Wednesday is signing day, December 9th, I think. Next Monday is when the portal opens. So those are some important dates. Some players are going to go in the portal. Some of them that maybe you don't expect that will surprise you. It's not just going to be like sort of, the roster, end of the roster guys that go in. So prepare yourself for that. I don't know who at this point. That's why there's surprises when they happen going in. So we'll see how that all shakes out. Signing day being Wednesday is sort of a weird timing thing because sort of, Monday after the end of the season is when you see a lot of these coaching changes or changes to your staff. I don't know if you're going to do that 2 days before signing day at this point. So if there are changes in store with this coaching staff, and again, I don't know if there are going to be, I would imagine they would wait until after signing day to do that because, if the head coach gets fired, and you've seen some of those, then the portal just opens up immediately for players, but not if you get rid of an assistant coach. So there is probably some value to waiting until after signing day and getting those letters of intent signed and locked up, and then you make changes to your staff at that point. You see it every year.
December used to be my favorite month because it's just bowl games. All you had to worry about was football, and now they've put signing day, transfer portal. Bowl games aren't even taken seriously anymore. Like if coaches are leaving their schools before the bowl game, they're like that makes those games like not even important. You're seeing games coached with incomplete coaching staffs, players opted out, things like that. So there's like 4 big things that happen during the month of September, and the actual football games are the least important. Now, that being said, I still want Virginia Tech to win its bowl game because 7-6 just sounds a lot better than 6-7. But, there's a lot to process throughout this month. And the bowl game is it's not going to be top priority, unfortunately.
I can't believe that they moved the signing day to this point.
Even earlier, yeah.
It's just so, I guess the point is to get coaches off the road in December.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you can do an early signing day, do it in August. Like if these players, you're trying to get the guys that know where they're going to go.
Right.
Most of the guys that are signing this week have committed over the summer or the spring or something like that. And if they know where they're going to go, just let them play their senior season in peace.
Sure.
So I don't know. They moved it to another spot. It doesn't feel like it's in the right spot now either.
Yeah, very interesting. What's coming up for editorial content this week?
We've got to focus on that. We're doing a bunch of videos this afternoon, which will get released later.
Yep.
About all the players that Tech signs. I'll have a signing day column. I'll have a Q&A. I don't exactly know what our signing day plans are as far as what's going to happen on the site. I know what I'm going to do, but yeah, it's going to be a busy week either way, and also basketball.
Also, just
I forgot about that.
Thing.
December is our busiest time now, with the exception of August. It might even be busier than August. Now, it really ticks me off every year as I watch the rest of the country just wind down in December and basically do nothing because of Christmas, and I'm just can never do that.
Yeah. Andy's got a Christmas shop, too.
My wife takes care of it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Now, I'll have signing day coverage. I think Tech is doing that sort of signing day show, that draft thing that they do all the time, and we'll be able to go in and see a part of that at least. They don't have transfers included in that, obviously, because the transfer portal is not open. So that's a little bit different. I think they have 17 commitments right now. So maybe go a little bit quicker than past years where they had 25, 30 guys that they were announcing at that show. I probably will try to do sort of a bowl explainer, laying it out. It's tough to find a time to write that because there's so many hypotheticals with it. I'd love to see the college football rankings tomorrow night before I kind of explain that, but I also don't want that to then just bleed into the signing day coverage and get lost in the shuffle. So I'll figure out a time to run it. It'll be on the site.
Nick, what do we got video stuff this week?
I really don't know besides the signing day videos because everything's just all jumbled up. I know we will have a signing day podcast at some point this week. No basketball video content, no Q&A. You want to do a Q&A, Chris?
Probably not this week.
Okay, we won't do it this week. No more press conference breakdowns by Carter Hill. So that's
No
kind of
more.
sad. Yeah, no more. He will host the signing day videos with Chris though, but that will be plenty enough work for Chris, Chris, Carter, and I. So yeah, it's gonna be a busy week. And then next week we'll figure out what we're gonna do from there. We'll figure out bowl game stuff in 2 weeks.
I hate to. Yeah.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot
Bowl
going
game
on.
stuff will be
but-
decided this Sunday.
Sunday after
Sunday.
conference
Yes, that's
championships.
right.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll probably do one then next week, but probably just a signing day podcast. So if you care about recruiting, if you love recruiting, great, watch it. If not, then that's probably not the podcast you want to watch.
Kudos to you guys because I hate to admit that I forgot they had moved the signing day. So when Nick came to me the week of Thanksgiving, is like, I need you to make all those recruiting graphics this week. I was like, I usually do this over like Christmas break.
Yeah.
Why do you need these now? And then I basically like logged off for like 3 days and I was like, I'm not doing anything. I'm prepped for the UVA game. I'm just going to enjoy family. I run into Nick at the gym last night. He's like, you got those graphics for me? And I was like, I'll have them to you by Tuesday. So
So what you're
sorry,
saying
Nick.
is immediately after this, you're just going to work straight up until signing day just to get those done.
I'm sticking around. I'm
Okay.
sticking around. Gonna have to leave for class, and then I might have to come back. But I can do a lot of it at home too. So I'm sorry, Nick, and I will have those for you, buddy. All right. I think that wraps things up for our show here today. For Andy, for Chris, for Nick, I'm Giovanni. We'll see you next time. It was episode 395 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Go Hokies.